Hey guys, my name is Gabby. Welcome back to my channel, and today we're going to be talking about how to get out of a reading slump. Every now and then, readers find themselves falling into a reading slump where we don't want to read anything. And it can happen sometimes after you read a really freaking good book. Sometimes you read a book that just changes your life in so many ways and you just can't focus on any other book and no other book will compare. Or sometimes it just hits you randomly. Sometimes you just get a little burnt out and you're just like tired of reading, and maybe you dislike so many books in a row that you're just like, how do I get out of this slump? And so today I'm coming at you with some tips for how to get out of a reading slump, because I've had quite a few of them myself and I've learned some things through the years about how to dig yourself out of that slump. But before we do jump into the video, I just wanted to say a huge thank you to Skillshare for sponsoring today's video. Skillshare is an online learning community with thousands of inspiring classes for creative and curious people. It's curated specifically for learning, meaning that there are no ads and they're always launching new premium classes so you can stay focused and follow wherever your creativity takes you. At a time when so many important conversations are happening in the world, your voice is more essential than ever, and you can explore the classes to unlock your creativity for social good. I have very recently started taking this class called Creative Writing Bootcamp, Start a Brand New Story by Mila Goldberg, and I'm really enjoying this class so far because I love how she talks about how it's really important to learn empathy and to really observe other people and learn how other people behave. And I think that's so important when it comes to developing characters when you're writing, because it's really important to understand empathy and understand why people react to things the way that they do, and understanding human behavior. And that was something that we did in my creative writing class in college, so it definitely felt very reminiscent of that. And I just love Skillshare's creative writing classes. If you couldn't tell, I recommend them almost every single time I do a video with Skillshare. I just really love their creative writing classes. They inspire me so much to write. But if that particular class doesn't interest you, they also offer classes in many different creative topics like film, design, animation, illustration, marketing, advertising, like literally nearly anything you can think of, it's probably there. And it's less than $10 a month with an annual subscription. So the first 1,000 of my subscribers to click the link in the description will get a free trial of premium membership that you can also go and explore your creativity. I've had a really great time working with Skillshare these last few months, taking a lot of their classes and learning so much. And once again, huge thank you to Skillshare for sponsoring today's video and supporting my channel and the booktube community. Now, without further ado, let's get into the tips about how to get out of a reading slump. I can think of a few books for sure that definitely left me in a reading slump for like months after I finished these books. One of them for sure was A Little Life, one of them was The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, and one of them was It Ends With Us by Colleen Hoover. All three of some of my favorite books of all time, but after I finished reading these books, I couldn't pick up anything else without being like, well, it's not as good as that book, so what does it even matter? Like, who even cares? And I do feel like sometimes I'll get into this mindset where I read so many like 2-star books in a row, and then I just get so frustrated and I get into this cycle of thinking, what's even the point of reading? You know, like I just get so upset, and then I get into a reading slump, and then I'm even more upset. And so I have some tips to get out of those situations if you find yourself in those situations, because I know how frustrating it can be. Like, you just want to read for fun and you're just not having a fun time. First piece of advice would be to just accept the fact that you're in a slump and maybe just take a break. You know, sometimes taking a break from reading can be the healthiest option for you, because maybe you'll take a break for like, say, a week, and then you come back just refreshed and just like ready to go again, and maybe you just needed a break. You know, you can take time for your other hobbies, like, you know, watching Netflix, or like watching a movie, or like bullet journaling, or doing like painting, I don't know, doing something else for a little bit. Focus your energy somewhere else for a time and then come back to reading, and maybe it'll just be like completely refreshing to just take a break and come back. My second piece of advice, if you don't want to do that, if you're like, no, I will power through this slump, my second piece of advice would just be to reread a favorite book of yours. You would be surprised how amazing it is to go back and reread a favorite book of yours. Even if it hasn't been that long since you've read the book, there's just something so comforting about reading a book and knowing you're gonna absolutely love it no matter what, and getting to revisit characters that you know and you love. My personal favorite reread is Fangirl by Rainbow Rowell. That is my comfort go-to reread, and I definitely have quite a few books out there that I would love to just reread again. And I always find that I never have time to reread or want to reread because I have the biggest TBR ever and I'm always wanting to get to the new books and the ones I'm so excited about. But when you do get into these reading slumps, it's almost like the perfect opportunity to go and reread one of your favorites because it'll remind you why you love reading in the first place, you know? It'll remind you why books are magic. And my third piece of advice would be to read really short books just to get you back into the feeling of reading, and because I know, at least for me, some of the sense of accomplishment I get from reading is when I finish a book. Like once I finish a book again, I'm like, okay, I'm starting to get over this slump. I can finish a book still. And so maybe reading a really short book or a novella or like a short story, maybe that will help you feel that sense of accomplishment so you don't have to feel so daunted by all the big books that are on your TBR still and being like, why can't I finish anything that I start? But with a short story, you don't have to worry about it being too much of a struggle because it's a short story, so you can read it pretty quick. So I would definitely recommend just checking out something short maybe that'll help you get through the slump. The fourth piece of advice I would have for you is to try an audiobook instead. I swear audiobooks help me read so much more than I ever imagined I could in a month and in a year. And audiobooks are great, and if you're not really a huge audiobook fan, maybe if you're in a reading slump, just try listening to an audiobook. Because audiobooks help me get through my slumps just because it's someone reading the story to me and I don't have to like use my eyeballs and use all of my energy to read the words on the page. I know sometimes reading slumps can just come because of the fact that I don't want to sit here holding this book and reading it with my eyes. Like it takes a lot of energy sometimes to do that. I know it doesn't seem like it, but sometimes it does. And just kicking back, listening to an audiobook, shutting off all the lights and just laying down on your bed and listening to an audiobook, it is very relaxing and it'll help you feel that same motivated and accomplished as finishing a book physically because you're just getting the story told to you, and it's magical. Audiobooks will change your life. And especially like even rereading a favorite book by listening to it on audio, that's usually the way that I like to go whenever I reread books, because if I loved it so much physically, I love hearing the story through an audiobook format on a reread. So that's always a great option too, like re-listening to one of your... My fifth piece of advice would be to read something that is easy to get through and is really easy to take in, like say a thriller or a romance, because this is especially my advice to the readers that love like fantasy and sci-fi and just like the more heavy genres, like the genres that will require your full attention when you read them, or even like literary fiction, like books that are more difficult to consume because they take more brain power, you know what I mean? But maybe you just need a fun, quick thriller with short chapters and something you can get through very quickly and that has suspense and it'll keep you interested. Or maybe you just need something like a romance that's really easy to read. You're just following these two characters and it's lighthearted and it'll make you laugh. Like maybe you just need those genres to help you get through this reading slump, because I know sometimes if I'm in a reading slump, like I cannot read literary fiction because my brain is just like, it just won't even try to process the words, you know? It's just, it takes too much brain power when you're in a reading slump like that. So I know thrillers and romances are just perfect. They're just light enough that they can just help you get through the book faster, and then you'll feel that sense of accomplishment when you finish it. My next piece of advice, I think this is number 6, I don't know, I lost count. Maybe you should just try reading something out of your comfort zone. I know for some people maybe this is how you got into this slump in the first place, like it always happens like this for me. Whenever I try to read something that's a bit out of my comfort zone, I'm like, no, and then I get into a reading slump and then I just go back to my favorite genres to get out of that reading slump. But you never know, maybe for some people this would be good advice, like reading something that you wouldn't normally read, and then maybe you'll find something interesting that can help you get out of this rut that you're in with whatever genre you usually love. I just think it would be interesting and adventurous to just go out and try a genre that you normally don't read, just to see if that motivates something in you to try something new. And then the last final piece of advice that I would have for anybody that's struggling through a reading slump is just to try and find an atmosphere that makes you want to read. I know right now during a pandemic isn't the most convenient time for this because, you know, most libraries are still closed, so you can't go to the library and you can't go into like a coffee shop and read, you know, the way that we used to. But even still, maybe like going to your local park, going to somewhere that's like quiet maybe, or like by a lake or something, or even just like in your room, like shutting off all the sound in your room, or even just turning on some like ASMR, maybe some ambiance for reading. I have a really great playlist that I will leave down below that's like reading ambiance, and it's just a playlist of so many videos that are just so relaxing, and they either have like rain sounds or fireplace sounds or things like that just to calm you down. Those videos help me relax so much, and they help me concentrate on the book that I'm reading because they just create this ambiance for the room that is just very relaxing. And you know, maybe you just need something like that. Like maybe you're just not in the right setting, like maybe you're just not in the right spot to be reading, like maybe the TV's on and there's just chaos around you and chaos in the background, and it's hard to focus on what you're doing. So maybe you just need to tune everything else out, just turn on some ambiance for reading. That might not completely cure your reading slump, but it'll definitely help you get back in the mood. So yeah, that is all of my advice on how to get out of a reading slump. That's all I got for you. That's all I can think of. If you guys have any other advice that you think is really great on how to get out of a reading slump, then please let me know down below. And also let me know, what is the one book that you go to if you are in a reading slump? Like, what are some books that you think would be good to read to get you out of a reading slump? Because like I said, some thrillers I think would be really great to get you out of a reading slump, some romances. I would definitely recommend The Unhoneymooners as one of my favorite romances that would get you out of a reading slump, because it's just so fun and so lighthearted, and I think that's a great one. And like I said earlier, Fangirl is like my go-to book when I'm in a reading slump to want to reread that one. Also like Aristotle and Dante and like We Are the Ants, like all of my favorite books of all time, those are definitely the books that I gravitate towards when I want to reread something to get me out of a slump. I feel like Riley Sager's books would be great to get you out of a reading slump, because I feel like his books are always so action-packed and just really, really interesting, and it'll hook you right away. So I think any of his 4 books would be great to get you out of a reading slump. But yeah, please let me know, what books do you think would be perfect to get out of a reading slump, and let me know any other tips or advice that you might have. And thank you guys so much for watching as always, and I will see you very soon with a new video. Bye!